Hey, much love and respect to everybody watching. I'm very appreciative. Thanks for all the support and love and all the comments. This is part two. Again, we're in the book of North American tribes, chiefs, warriors, and their stories. All right, it says portraits 200 years after colonization, circa 1800s. And again, these are the tribes represented in this book. We'll try to get to all of them. The at least the most significant images that we can find in this book. All right, and again, this is brought to you by the brothers at the North American Aboriginal Society. It says one nation, many tribes. All right, so much love to them for sharing this and putting all this together in one book, so it's easier for everybody to just to have access to and share it with their loved ones and for educational purposes as well. All right, it's a lot of good info here, not just image, so it's something very useful. All right. Stories. Again, this book has a lot of good info, not just images, and we're in this part of the informational part where it's talking about the Congolene, the conch relaxer, 1920. I thought it was interesting, wanted to read it out. It says the conch, or some might know today it as perm or relaxer, right? Derived from congoline, a hair straightener gel made by mixing lye, potatoes, and eggs. All right, see this? It was a hairstyle popular among American men of colors from the 1920s to the 1960s. So where did they get this idea from? Why using natural things like lye, potatoes, and eggs? Relaxing their hair. Why? Permanent, right? Straightening it out, you mean? Origin of the word conch or Congoline. An Americanism dating back to 1850-55 of obscure origin. It's made from here. They didn't come from Europe, all right? It started here. All right, so what does that tell you automatically? All right. The origin of the word is not very clear, but research shows the usage of the word seemed to only have became popular during the 1800s. We are taught that they had no prior history of the usage of this hair gel before European contact. We are led to believe that it was created by a European before ever reaching the hands of a Black American. Below, we will dive into how it became the popular hair product many use today. It says early history. In the early days of Americans used a process of nixtamalization, all right, to treat maize, aka corn. We know about this. They add like alkaline, like water and lemon, and to the maize. This makes it the masa, or the like what the flour, like the what you can shape into bread and all that. This is called nixtamalization. We got that in my corn videos. All right, and so to make a food product called hominy. All right, we know that a lot of the Aboriginals, that's one of their dishes, hominy, especially in the South. We make that a lot in Spanish countries. I mean, corn is a big part of our diet. All right, it's soaked in solution called lime or wood ash lye water. You see, this would soften or burn the hulls of corn kernels. Lye was used for a variety of things. For example, using lye on a tree bark, which in turn relaxes the bark fiber and removes the sap, which would make the bark brittle and stiff. The boiled strips of bark are shaved down with a knife to their desired width. The fibers from the bark were used to make many various things like ropes and lines, nets, mats, baskets, bags, belts, and straps, shoes, and many other items. There was an ancient custom that was famous among many of the southern tribes, all right, where they would take the same lye, water, and create a sort of hair gel by mixing egg and potato to obtain certain hairstyles for religious or cultural practices, all right? After colonization, many laws recreated that barred any of these tribes from practicing religious or cultural customs, and pretty much, if not all majority, of their culture was lost due to war and slavery. Somehow, this practice of relaxing the hair was passed down without the knowledge of where it actually came from. Today, many will look at it as a trying to be white and not embracing a natural hairstyle. All right, natural hairstyle. We're seeing all these images, right? With all these, we're seeing it's undeniable. These are copper-colored people, what you would consider to be called Negroes, right? But you see it with their long hair in these old pictures, right? And then you're gonna call saying, "Oh, these people trying to be white, or they're Mongols, or this and that," and you're not understanding. You know, this was a cultural practice, and this thing started here with natural things. They were using it, all right, to relax their hair. Again, today many of will look at it as trying to be white and not embracing a natural hairstyle, not realizing this was a cultural custom being practiced before any American Indian ever seen what they could call a pale face on their land. All right, you were already doing this. You were relaxing your hair, straightening it out, of course. Now, it says here later history. In 1910, an inventor by the name of Garrett Morgan, aka Big Chief Mason, took out a patent on the very first hair straightening product. All right, you hear this? So this was an Indian. All right. The story goes, while working in a sewing machine repair shop, Morgan attempted to invent a new lubricating liquid for the machine needle. When Morgan wiped his hand on a wool cloth, returned the next day and found the woolly texture of the cloth had smoothed out, did a few tests on animals and himself. After then, it came into exist. All right, not sure where this story derived from, but even an inventor knows you could never use eggs, potato, and light water for lubrication. But somehow this story continues to be told. All right, so that's the lie he's saying. Garrett Morgan always claimed his heritage of full-blood Indian and often claimed he was from Walpole Island. But this story is told to be as if he was imagining or made it up. All right, so they're saying that he was the first person to invent this, but they were trying to say that the origin is not American Indian. They're trying to throw you off with the whole how he make up with it, but we know that he's a 100% Indian, right? Uh, so we will show, says here later in this book, how everything from his parents to locations of birth has so many cracks it can easily be dismantled. Somehow this tradition was passed down to Garrett, who used the product on himself frequently and capitalized on this knowledge by taking out a patent on it, along with other inventions like the 3-point traffic light. You see this? Smoke hood and many other various devices he invented. All right, he invented an American Indian. In the near future, we will be doing a complete story on Garrett Morgan. All right. So real quick, just wanted you to have a clear perspective of who this person was. All right, you see, so he created this first call hair relaxer, right? I guess he patented it. So look at this person. You can see definitely, what you would consider a a Negro and African American, right? And but he was again, remember, he was 100% Indian. He was an Indian. He was an American Indian inventor, right? Look at him. All right, now let's read a little bit about him. This is at pbs.org. All right, I'm at the pbs.org website. They made America. Who made America? Look who made America. The Aboriginals made America. All right, Garrett Augustus Morgan, affordable gas mask. The African American, right? Dodged the hijack. I told you they were going to call him that, but he's an Indian. Inventor of a life-saving device, mechanical traffic signals, and more had to fight for recognition. So it says that he's the son of freed slaves. Son of freed slaves, were they really slaves? Were they just free people? Where's the proof? Garrett Morgan saved the hood, saved the lives of countless firefighters and others. He was born in Kentucky during the Reconstruction era in 1877. His father was the mixed-race son of a slave and a Confederate, Colonel John Hunt Morgan. All right. His mother, half Indian and half black. What does that mean? Half Indian, half black. It's all the same. There's no such thing as black. We ain't creating color. We already know how to dodge the hijack. We already read how they were classifying people black, American Indians. He was an Indian. His dad was probably one too. All right. Unless he was one of those European indentured servants that came over and a descendant of that, right? But if not, he's most likely an Indian too, because they say he's the son of a slave. Son of a slave, really? A servant, indentured servant? All right, but he's most likely Aboriginal. We got to look into that. I haven't really gone into the family. I'm just going into right now as I'm reading the book with you guys now. So I decided to come see who this Garrett Augustus Morgan is. I thought that was interesting. And you can see here. It says inventive nature. Though Morgan only had a 6th grade education, he had a mechanical genius and an entrepreneurial bent. Finding work in a textile factory, he learned how the machines worked and became the only Negro adjuster, fixing and improving mechanical problems. In 1907, he opened his own repair shop and soon launched a clothing business with his wife, an immigrant seamstress from Bavaria. It was an era of difficulty for African Americans, dodge the hijack, that didn't even exist back then. But Morgan made money, becoming the first so-called black man, the first Aboriginal in Cleveland to own a car. What? You see that? He was the first one whipping cars right here. All right. He branded. He branched out into cosmetic products, joined a new organization called the N.A.A.S. All right, you see that? But he was the first with cosmetic products, hair relaxers, and soon was donating money from Negro colleges. In 1920, he started a newspaper for African Americans, the Cleveland Call, and opened an all-black county club. In 1923, he patented a mechanical traffic signal that he sold to General Electric. All right, it was widely used, yet Morgan earned only $40,000 for the invention. The safety hood is another thing. All right, this is history. So again, this is the person we were just reading about. Right? Gotta fact check everything. Again, we were reading in this book about Garrett Morgan and the hair relaxer, right? And it continues right here. It says, we are told this specific product was invented by Garrett, but it was already being used amongst many of the Southern people of color years prior. So it's not like he was the only one that was, using this and coming up with this. He just patented something that his ancestors were already doing. Right? It's for letting you know. Many people in the South were already doing this. The majority of other cultures who immigrated to America only became familiar with the hairstyle and product through movies and media once Hollywood established in 1923. They, promoting it in film and almost every musical act, wore them. Around the same time, we became aware of this product and hairstyle because of the newly found mass media outlets. Many so-called blacks learned the traditions from their barber or father growing up, but many lost knowledge of its early usage amongst many American tribes. All right. All right. So, well, right now we're gonna see this part of the book, which is about the Seminole. All right, who I believe mostly were in Florida. They might have been in other states, maybe, but mostly in Florida, I believe. And so actually, let's read about it. The information is here, right? All right, so it says the Seminole are American Indians, people originally from Florida. Today, they principally live in Oklahoma, with a minority in Florida, and comprise 3 federally recognized tribes: the Seminole Tribe of Oklahoma, the Seminole Tribe of Florida, and Miskosukee Tribe of the Indians of Florida, as well as independent groups. The Seminole Nation emerged in a process of ethnogenesis from various American Indian groups who settled in Florida in the 18th century, most significantly northern Muskogee, the Creeks, in parentheses, from what is now Georgia and Alabama. All right. The word Seminole is derived from the Muskogee word Cimano Li, which may itself be derived from the Spanish word cimarron, meaning runaway or wild one. A wild one, right? Copper-colored, maroon. Seminole culture is largely derived from that of the Creek. The most important ceremony is the green corn dance. Other notable traditions include use of the black drink and ritual tobacco. As the Seminole adapted to Florida environs, they developed local traditions such as construction of open-air thatched roof houses known as chickees. Historically, the Seminole spoke Miccosukee and Creek, both Muskogean languages. The Seminole became increasingly independent of other Creek groups and established their own identity. They developed a thriving trade network during the British and Second Spanish periods, roughly 1767 to 1821. The tribe expanded considerably during this time and was further supplemented from the late 18th century by free people of color. Free people of color, right? That's just other American Indians. Don't get lost in the wordplay here. Alright, so it says they were supplemented by more Indians, basically, and escaped enslaved Indians who settled near and paid tribute to Seminole towns. The latter became known as Black Seminoles. Note, black is a misnomer, considering majority of the earlier Seminole were of dark complexion, alright? These were all aboriginals. Dodge the hijack is what he's letting you know. Today, European historians claim many Seminoles are escaped African slaves.
But there is no proof of this, all right? There's no proof of this. All right, that's just the same old story, right? They're trying to say that an Indian is dark skinned, or he looks like a so-called Negro because he has to be a descendant of a African slave who escaped and ran and went to live and mix with the Indians, right? So that's the hijack with all that. We know that's totally, totally false, all right? Because you've been here, you are the American Indian, all right? These were other just American Indians that were running away, right? So, they didn't want to be servants anymore. Like, yo, you're not meeting my contract. I'm out. And you're whipping me and you're treating me like, no. Only accounts by European explorers who dare to claim land for themselves. So they simply write the inhabitants out of the history they control. You see that? They started calling you an African slave because these European explorers, they wanted to claim your land for themselves. All right? So they gotta write you out of history. All right? So you will never claim it back. All right? So this is just a little bit of info on them. Go ahead and keep reading this. It gets good. It's a lot of information on them. All right? So let me get to the images right now. All right. So this is the very first image they have here of Seminoles. All right. A lot of us have seen this image on the internet. All right. And a lot of people would say, oh, but those are descendants of escaped African slaves. So Dutch, the hijack, these are 100% pure, Seminoles. All right. From Florida, look at their traditional clothing. All right. A lot of this clothing from the Florida and, like the Chata people in Central America, Mesoamerica, like in Costa Rica, like our traditional clothing is just like the clothing the women wear. Well, the women here, wear almost identical when it talks about folklore here, the folklore in Costa Rica. So it's very interesting. And you can see, these two people today will be classified as African Americans, right? But that's, an Aboriginal, an indigenous person, 100% Amaru Khan, an American, a real American, all right? Copper-colored tribes of America, all right? And this is the people as he was saying earlier, they wrote them out of history, all right? So they won't claim back their land, all right? You see? Do you remember now? All right? Just zoom in a little bit more, all right? Let me see if there's any information here. So it says William Loren Katz and Paula A. Franklin, Seminole. All right. Now, if you want to go research this, go ahead. That would be very interesting. So now we have a name to the image we always see on the internet. A lot of probably out there already knew that. I don't think I ever knew their names, but I have a lot of their images here. So it's William Loren Katz and Paula A. Franklin. All right. William and Paula. All right, Seminoles. Not Africans. Indigenous people of the Americas. All right, we're in the next image now, so let me just read it. First, it says Miami John Tiger and his wife Susie, daughter Annie Ruby Tiger, and another unidentified daughter. Seminole, Everglades, Florida, 1910. All right, so this is the family right here. All right, you see? Nice. Copper-colored tribes of America. All right, like I was saying, this kind of clothing, at least the skirt part, they dress like this when they dress the folklore here in Mesoamerica. Same. These are American Indians, Aboriginals, autochtons of this location, possibly ancient, Mexica, Mayan people, or, Caribs, Arawaks that came up, from ancient times, or simply coming down the other way direction. So we all digging on all that, but definitely from the Americas. All right, these are aboriginals today. They would be classified as an African American family. All right. We got this next image right here. All right, another Seminole. It says son of Sam Willie at Musa Iso Indian Village near Miami, Florida. All right, this is near Miami, Florida. Seminole, 1923. 1923. All right. Next image, we got George Osceola and his wife, Deer Clan, Seminole. You see this? These people would be called African Americans today. You know, and that's what they did. They reclassified you first. Oh, mulatto. Let's just put mulatto or colored, Negro. Years went by, black. Right? Now, some more years go by, African American. Put that African in front of you. So automatically, first thing is in people's mind, the spells. You know, oh, African. Oh, okay. Oh, okay. Well, yeah. Well, and then they're like, oh, well, these are descendants of slaves that escaped. No, these are 100% Seminole people. All right, these are Seminoles. Gosh, the hijack. The gig is up. All right, 2020. I saw a comment. It was that somebody left me. It was really good. I forgot the name. You know, much love to you. You know who you are. And she said 2020, right? Dawned to me like 2020 vision, right? It's time to see. It's time to see clearly, like a dragon, plum serpent, Amaru. The etymology of dragon is to see clearly. Do you see clearly? All right, these are Seminoles. Look at her. All right, you gonna deny that? Look at her. She got her hair done, her gear. All right, ancient people in this region. Very ancient people in this region. All right, back up a little bit. Next image. This is Ruby. All right, so hold on. This was I think that was one of their daughters. Now she's bigger here. 1910. Ruby Tigertail. Ruby Tigertail. You see, we've seen this image. I've seen it a lot in the internet. So if you didn't know the names, here are the name. This is Ruby Tigertail, 1910, and the Seminole. All right. Your ancestors. So we gotta honor all these people. You know, they wrote out a history. They try to write out a history. You know, but you know, it's time to remember. Time to heal, like Ty has been saying. Time to heal, build. It's time to heal. All right, Ruby Tigertail, 1910, Seminole. All right, look at her. Proud, very proud. This ain't a Mongol right here. All right, now we got Charlie Tigertail, the brother of Ruby Tigertail. This is her brother, right? So this is her, and this is her brother. All right, Charlie Tigertail. At Ted Salwood's store on Chokolotsky Island in southwestern Florida. Seminole circa 1910. Outside somebody's store. Look at that. Look at that. Is that alligator, crocodile? I'm not sure. All right. That's his pet. Is that his pet? That's his pet right there. He ain't playing. All right. Let me zoom in. All right. He's thinking a lot. He's like, damn. He's thinking a lot, man. It's like, I wonder if they're gonna remember me. It's like, I wonder if they're gonna remember me. You know? Or are they gonna forget about me? They're gonna say I'm a descendant of a slave. Or are they gonna know descendant from great people? Alright, so Charlie Tigertail. Alright. Seminole with his gator or a crocodile. Y'all probably know better than me. We got, I think it's crocodiles here in Costa Rica. All right, next image. Look at this. All right, now this is a Seminole. Zoom in. You see? Oh, you're saying he's a descendant of a slave? Where's your proof? He knows his genealogy. He knows his ancestors. He knows he ain't come off no slave ship. Nobody in his family. He knows they're not African at all. All right. This is a Seminole American Indian. All right. Let me see if we get some info. We got no info on him. Maybe it's Tiger. Oh, yep. Okay, I get it. All right. I think this is Charlie Tiger and older. All right. All right. Any questions? Do you remember who you are? Hey, All right. Next image. Wow. Look at the thing she has on her hair. Let me just zoom into that. You see her hair? She got these design things holding her hair, I guess. And she's got another one too. Alright, you see them? All these people would be labeled African Americans today. He would be labeled an African American. So would they. Alright? The traditional clothing. Alright? Very popular clothing, like known throughout all the Americas, especially in the so-called Spanish-speaking countries. Alright? And in the Caribbean as well. See, there's two Seminoles. Alright? We got another two Seminole females in traditional clothing. Again, might be the same ladies. I'm not sure. Let me see. I'm not sure if it's the same ones, but as you can see, I don't think it's the same ones. You see how they wear all these things around their neck? Wow. Alright. Seems like somebody was trying to resemble somebody, and I think it was us still trying to resemble over here in America. Alright, you see copper-colored tribes of America. These two beautiful indigenous aboriginal women would be classified as African American today. Alright, and this is what he was talking about, writing you out of history. They started calling you mulatto, colored Negro, then African American to take your claim from your land. Alright, so they can claim it. Do you remember? Alright, these are Seminole Indians, alright? And now we got this image. Alright, very famous image. I know a lot of you have seen it on the internet. Let me just back up so we can see the whole, because I love her gear. It's like, for me, it's really interesting because it almost looks like that Japanese style gear. But she got the fringes. You see that? She got her fringes. She got this hanging. For those who know, just look at the fringes coming out her hair. All right. Diana Fletcher. She's a Seminole. Diana Fletcher. Now you know her name and her tribe. All right. Very popular image on the internet. You've seen it probably here and there. All right. This is what we call Yapa. Beautiful. Aboriginal. All right. I mean, especially her whole clothing. Again, to me, this looks almost like Japanese. So you see where they get their influence, because we're the trendsetters over here. This is the origin, the true old world. All right. So let me just zoom in to Diana. Let me back up. It's a little too close. There we go. Diana Fletcher, right? 100% indigenous American. 100%, not She's a descendant of a slave, not 50%, not no. This is an Aboriginal. This is a Seminole, and then trace their history. The Seminoles, from wherever they came from, we read it a little bit earlier. It goes deeper and deeper. Actually, it goes real deep, and so she's from an ancient people. All right, all the images I've shown you, even the ones from the last video, these are all ancient people you're looking at. Go look in the mirror. You're an ancient people. That's you. All right. True old world. So Diana Fletcher, she's a Seminole with her gear. You see. Read into the ceremonies, the practices, the traditions that these tribes had, their language, what it resembled. So we're not saying, so you can see why we're talking about certain people resembling another people that's written about in so-called religious books. All right, but we know the origin. We're talking about you are the book. All right, so man, I just can't get over how she looks. To me, she looks like she's ready to like start whipping ass. Like all of a sudden, start doing some kung fu, Shaolin. Some Wing Chun. Because Wing Chun was made by a woman. Wing Chun, whip some ass, start flying and stuff. Flying dragon. Talking about flying dragon right here. Crouching jaguar. Flying dragon, crouching jaguar style. Like she's ready to get at somebody. All right. So again, Diana Fletcher from the Seminole tribe. Seminole warrior. I guess it's the same person. I think it is. All right. many different types of looks, many different shades, types of hair. All right, you know, this is a Seminole though. Can't take that away from him. All right, so this is let me see, Chief Billy Bowlegs, the Seminole. All right, Billy Bowlegs. Zooming in so you can see. Check out the gear. All right. He was flossing like a little bow tie or something. He's decked out right here. He's fashionable, man. These people were so fashionable. They created their own clothes and stuff. Do you remember? You know why you're so creative now? You see, like, how you so creative with the clothing and everything. Wants everybody, the whole world wants to copy you. Always Nike, and you know all of them, Adidas, all of them. They take your styles and then they create a corporate identity, you know, like identity for it, and then they sell it and then make it into a fashion. Your whole creativity, everything, you know, and the world loves it. The world buys it, and you don't get nothing from it. So you know, it would be nice to go back to be able to do your own clothing, design, dress how you want. Like, yo, I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna design this. Yeah, that's what's up. Look at it. All right. We're talking about copper-colored tribes of America, Aboriginals. All right, Billy Bowlegs, a Seminole Indian. Billy Bowlegs again, right here. All right. This time he got his gun. He ain't playing. All right, Billy Bowlegs, Seminole. All right, so continuing with the book of North American Tribes, Chiefs, Warriors, and Their Stories. This part is also in this book, this segment about basically the paper genocide of the American Indian, and it's gonna mainly talk about the Racial Integrity Act of 1924. I know a lot of you out there know about this and what happened and who Walter Plecker is, but there's people that might not know, and you know they might not have even heard of this or even saw this. Basically, what they call the health bulletin that he posted to preserve racial integrity. All right, so I'm gonna read real quick this paragraph, but then I'm gonna go to the original. So first it says, Virginia's Indian tribes have faced numerous obstacles in their decades-old quest for federal recognition, but one person has long stood in their way, and he's been dead for 68 years. Walter Plecker, a physician, eugenicist, and avowed white supremacist. All right, see who he is? This Walter Plecker. All right, ran Virginia's Bureau of Vital Statistics with single-minded resolve over 34 years in the first half of the 20th century. So they got this eugenicist. If you don't know about eugenics, study up on it. But how they were trying to, you know, basically sterilize a lot of people. They were trying to create a master race, really, and looking and determining who had good blood and bad blood or whatever, you know. So look up in that. And these eugenicists became today's, you know, anthropologists and all that, and you know, so a lot of key figures in this eugenics movement, and one of their leaders, Darwin's brother. All right, so eugenicist, right? And then he's a white supremacist. So they made him in charge of the vital statistics in Virginia. So you see already who's controlling things, right? And what kind of perspective he's going to have, especially since you are the copper-colored race of America. Copper-colored, you have a dark hue, and he's a white supremacist. All right, so though he died in 1947, Plecker's shadow still lingers over the state, a vestige of a vicious era when racist practices were an integral part of government policy, and Virginia's official ruthlessly enforced laws created to protect what they considered a master white race. All right, that's what it was about. All right, the paper genocide, because they were trying to create a master white race. Did they have help? All right, so what I have here is the original, what they say here, Virginia Health Bulletin from March 1924. All right, that's volume 16, number 2. It says the new Virginia law to preserve racial integrity. This is written by W.A. Plecker. Remember, Walter Plecker. MD is the State Registrar of Vital Statistics, Richmond, Virginia. It says here, Senate Bill 219 to preserve racial integrity passed the House March 8, 1924, and is now a law of the state. This bill aims at correcting a condition which only the more thoughtful people of Virginia know the existence of. Now listen to what he's talking about. It is estimated that there are in the state from 10,000 to 20,000, possibly more, near white people who are known to possess an intermixture of colored blood. In some cases, to a slight extent, it is true, but still enough to prevent them from being white. In the past, it has been possible for these people to declare themselves as white, or even to have the court so declare them. So you hear what's going on, right? There was people that were not white. There was, being labeled. Now, if we remember from our past videos and just from, research, we knew that a lot of the times they were just naming people, Negro, white based on status, had nothing to do really with complexion. Remember we went over that article, Making Indians White in Virginia. All right, they were doing it on purpose actually a lot of the times, but now he's saying he wants to control this and clean that, because now there's a lot of people saying they're white and he doesn't want them to be called white, right? So remember, this is a white supremacist. All right, now that's his excuse, right? In many countries, they exist as distinct colonies, holding themselves aloof from Negroes. Continuing, then they have demanded the admittance of their children into the white schools, and in not a few cases have intermarried with white people. In many countries, they exist as distinct colonies, holding themselves aloof from Negroes, but not being admitted by the white people as of their race. Talking about like mixed people, mulattoes. I mean, who's he declaring as mulatto? Remember mulatto? A lot of the times we're just calling the Indians mulatto, just because they were light skinned. They had no mixture, right? Especially in Virginia. In any large gathering or school of colored people, especially in the cities, many will be observed who are scarcely distinguishable as colored. These persons, however, are not white in reality, nor by the new definition of this law, that a white person is one with no trace of the blood of another race, except that a person with 1/16 of the American Indian, except, if there is no other race mixture, may be classed as white. You see that? Their children are likely to revert to the distinctly Negro type, even when all apparent evidence of mixture has disappeared. Even if you don't even look Negro, your parents look a little bit white or can pass as white, and you look white, it don't matter. You're still going to be distinctly called the Negro, even when all apparent evidence of mixture has disappeared. The Virginia Bureau of Vital Statistics has been called upon within 1 month for evidence by 2 lawyers employed to assist people of this type to force their children into the white public schools, and by another employed by the school trustees of a district to prevent this action. And we're in page 2. I got a little blurry now, right? So it says, in each case, evidence was found to show that either the people themselves or their connections were reported to our office to be of mixed blood. Our bureau has kept a watchful eye upon the situation and has guarded the welfare of the state as far as possible with inadequate law and power. The condition has gone on, however, and is rapidly increasing in importance. Unless radical measures are used to prevent it, Virginia and other parts of the nation must surely, in time, go the way of all other countries in which people of 2 or more races have lived in close contact. With the exception of the Hebrew race, complete intermixture or amalgamation has been the inevitable result. You hear that? He's saying the only ones that are pure are the Hebrews. Are we talking about the real Hebrews? We're talking about the people that write about in the Bible, the ancient ones, architects, teachers, priests, kings, the anointed, the prophets, chiefs. Cacique, Katzin. Katzin is in Hebrew means chief. Katzin. And how you say it in Spanish? Cacique. Katzin. Katsi. Alright, so who are they talking about? To succeed, the intermarriage of the white race with mixed stock must be made impossible. But that is not sufficient. Public sentiment must be so aroused that intermixture out of wedlock will cease. The public must be led to look with scorn and contempt upon the man who will degrade himself and do harm to society by such abhorrent deeds. The Bureau of Vital Statistics clerks who issue marriage licenses and the school authorities are the barriers placed by this law between the danger and the safety of the Commonwealth. So you see how they get all fancy with the words and try to make it like it's a state of emergency. All right, they're so worried. You know what I mean? He's so worried. These white supremacists. All right, and you see how he talks like, oh man, we got to take action. Oh man, we got the schools involved. We got the Commonwealth and the Bureau of this and the Bureau of that. All right. There is a plan, however, by which it may be financed if the public will lend its aid. Let's get funding for this. Thousands have applied for the registration of births that occurred before June 14th, 1912, the date when the old law went into effect. The new law further provides for the registration of all persons who desire it, and who will make application for such registration of color and birth, remitting at the same time the fee of 25 cents for each applicant. Do not send stamps. These births will be permanently recorded and preserved for all time. You see that? For all time. Do not send stamps. Don't stamp it to that time. Because these births will be permanently recorded and preserved for all time. They want you to be called black, Negro, colored, you know, everything else that is not you. And that's for all time. That was their plan. That was his plan. And it's still going, right? It's still working for all time. And will be a great value for many purposes. Especially to take their land. Such as to prove American citizenship when applying for passports to go abroad. And for establishing and preserving the family tree for future generations. He made it sound all good, right? That you're getting reclassified, paper genocide. All right, now you can prove you're an American citizen, a citizen, like a Roman citizen, like like some sovereign people want to be citizens of the corporation. Now you're a citizen, right? You can get taxed now. We will even admit for registration persons living in Virginia, but born elsewhere. Also, Virginians now living elsewhere. A family may complete its family tree by recording deceased ancestors or relatives. Each person will thus obtain full value received for the small fee. Married women should give both their full maiden name and name of husband. If 10 or 20,000 or more will register within the next few weeks, we will be able to provide printed forms, filing cases, desks, typewriters, postage, and clerk hire to begin a vigorous statewide educational propaganda. So he's saying if 20,000 people apply, that's 25 cents each. You know, do the math. That's a lot of money back then. So he's saying we can even finance this, self-finance it through them. You know what I'm saying? The ancestors and everybody else who did this had to finance it themselves, this whole agenda. After 90 days, those who do not register at once may do it through our local registrars at the same cost. Write at once for sufficient registration cards and instructions, enclosing for reply stamped address envelope large enough to hold 3 by 5 inch cards. A card announcing the registration will be returned as soon as possible. Lodges, listen to this. Whoa, lodges, patriotic orders. What do they mean by all this? You know, we're gonna get into this. All right. Plus, we got our guest speaker, my brother Anu, helping me out in Kiowa with this. You know, because you know, these patriotic orders, like the Sons of Liberty, they mean. the Sons of Liberty are the ones who actually dressed up as Mohawks and dumped the tea in the Boston Tea Party in the harbor. These were orders, secret societies, all right, patriotic, and they were called patriotic, all right. And then it's linked to the Red Men, the Order of the Red Man, but we'll talk about that when we get to it. So they're talking about here that now they're addressing these people. It says lodges, patriotic orders, women's organizations, and schools can act in bodies for the purpose of establishing the true color of individuals for the future. Physicians and others who report births and marriages will, as far as possible, use color terms accurately. You see what they're saying? Even the lodges, these orders are going to help out with this. All the organizations and the schools, all right? So they can establish a true color, like a crayon color, like crayon, right? So the doctors, as soon as you're born, they're going to do it too, all right? They're going to make sure to have the color terms accurately put in these little forms. They're going to fill out so when you're born, all right? So it says a mulatto is the offspring of a white person and a Negro, all right? So dodge the hijack, right? So in 1924, that's when he's making that official that a mulatto is what that means. That's what he's saying. But then who's white and who's Negro? All this is messed up. All these classifications. All right. Do you remember my video I did on the 16? This is in what, 1705? Yeah, the black codes. Wow. So he's saying in 1924, right? A mulatto is the offspring of a white person and a Negro. All of a sudden, they included a white person, right? We didn't see that in 1705, and they didn't say anything about offsprings or mixtures when we read that Vitals, the statutes at large from Virginia, from William Hennon, the official primary source. All right, they said that a mulatto is a child of an Indian, as well as a child of a Negro, grandchild, great-grandchild. Like they didn't say nothing about that. If an Indian and a Negro have an offspring, that is a mulatto. They didn't say nothing about offspring, right? You didn't see any word that said offspring or say anything about mixture, right? But 1924, all of a sudden, mulatto means that you have white. All right, but all your family has mulatto in their census records, right? And then all of a sudden they were black. Some of them even went to white, from black to white. All right, so what's happened? These people changing colors over the 10-year periods. All right, so you got to really think about that and dodge your own hijack when you're talking about, oh, my great-grandmother was white or my great-grandfather was white. You got to really look into that. Was he? Do you have a picture of him? I'm not saying that they might not have been, some of them might have been, but I'm just saying, you got to think about all this and research and check out the background behind it. Because these dudes be lying and making up things. Don't you see? That's what I'm trying to show you. So it says, again, a mulatto is the offspring of a white person and a Negro. I have another reference just wanted to go to before I proceed. One moment. Yeah, so in the book Africans and Native Americans by Jack D. Forbes, he has a whole chapter on this. He talks about it a lot throughout the book, but in chapter 7 it says here, the classification of Native Americans as mulattoes in Anglo-North America as mulattoes. You had no mixture. He told you, he showed all the laws and the sources. In the 1700s, they were classifying people as mulatto with no African ancestry, all right? Get the book, all right? Go back to the videos if you haven't seen them, all right? So now Walter Plecker is telling you mulattoes are the offspring of a white person and a Negro. See how much it changed, all right, through all these years? It says a quadroon is the offspring of a mulatto and a white person. So now that's all messed up because the mulatto term is messed up. So an octoroon is the offspring of a quadroon and a white person. Wow. You're just making up things here. All right, we continue with this, what's called the Racial Integrity Act, or the New Virginia Law to Preserve Racial Integrity. All right, so we already got Dodge the hijack. We already know what they mean. They say mulatto in the old census, and they're trying to make it a mixed thing now with white and black, but it wasn't like that before. So we continue. It says mixtures of either of these crossings with true Negroes should be designated as black, Negro, or colored. All right. So remember, this is when they start making you, they're labeling you these things. All right. The term mixed issue, and perhaps one or two others, will be understood to mean a mixture of white and black races with the white predominating. Alright? That is the class that should be reported with the greatest care, as many of these are on the borderline and constitute the real danger of a race intermixture. They're like, yo, you gotta watch them because these ones that are mixed, those are the bigger issues, because they're borderline, they might try to call themselves white. We don't want that. They're Negroes. We don't care. So, they might not even be talking about anybody that's mixed. All right. Anyway, it says the term Indian. Now, hear this. Very important. The term Indian, all right, will no longer be accepted for that class. All right. You're not longer an Indian. You're no longer an Indian. All right. We're talking about people that might be labeled black, Negro, or colored, all right, or that might seem mixed. It says the term Indian will no longer be accepted for that class, but must be applied only to those of known pure Indian blood, or those mixed with white. Oh, mixed with white, really? If there is a mixture of Negro, they must not be classed as Indians, but as Negro or mixed Indian. You see that? Oh, how come he's the mixed Indian? So if they're mixed with so-called white, they get to be called a pure Indian blood. You see that? And you see why today, right? And a lot of these reservations, we got to talk honest. There's a lot of white, right, descendants there, or, people that breeded in or mixed into whites mixed in, and they were called pure Indians. According to Walter Plecker, that was an act. That was law. They made law, right? But if you have any mixture of Negro, or if you're a Negro, or they think you might be Negro, they must not be classed as Indians. All right? You're no longer an Indian. Now you're a Negro, but as a Negro. All right? You see? This was an act in 1924, or mixed Indian. Now you're mixed. Now they say mixed with what? Well, descendant of a slave or a Negro, right? An African. Right? Now if you see how they got the hijack going in 1924? So now all these people that, they knew were Indians, but because they look like Negroes or might have been mixed with a Negro, whatever they thought that was, right? They're trying to make you think these are slaves and Africans, right? Now he's a mixed Indian. Now you're mixed. You're not pure, like the one that's white and married into, and he's mixed. No. Now you're the mixed one, or you're the Negro. All right? So again, they're not going to class you as Indians anymore. Not Indians, but as mixed Indian or Negro. Now it says here, Japanese, Chinese, and other Mongolian and Malay races must be designated as such, given the country of their birth or their ancestors. When crossed with white, the race mixture should be indicated as Japanese white. If with blacks, they should be designated as black or Negro. You see that? So if a Japanese, mixes with a Aboriginal, right? They were like, nope, he's a Negro now. So let's forget about his whole heritage, Japanese side, right? See how they were doing it, right? They should be designated as black or Negro, but it may be written Negro Japanese. Oh, Negro Japanese. Wow. The Virginia Bureau of Vital Statistics is in possession of the marriage records for the state back to 1853, arranged by counties or cities and years, but they are not indexed further back than 1917. Also, births and deaths covering the period 1853 to 1896. If these can be properly indexed, they will afford an invaluable source of reference for establishing color in many cases and for other purposes. If sufficient revenue is derived from the registration fees, it is hoped that this index can be done and addressed. So now it says, an address from Bureau of Vital Statistics, Virginia, 1924. Now, remember, they're trying to make the people who fill out these little forms on their own to be the ones to pay for this and finance this. So they're saying, if we can get a lot of people to fill these little forms out, then we can just self-finance it, right? And we can have sufficient revenue, all right? It says, now, number one, now the act says here, an act to preserve racial integrity. All right, we're almost done. Be it enacted by the General Assembly of Virginia that the State Register of Vital Statistics may, as soon as practicable after the taking effect of this act, prepare a form whereon the racial composition of any individual as Caucasian, Negro, Mongolian, American Indian, Asiatic, Indian, Malay, or any mixture thereof, or any other non-Caucasian strains, and if there be any mixture, then the racial composition of the parents and other ancestors, insofar as ascertainable, so as to show in what generation such mixture occurred, may be certified by such individual, which form shall be known as a registration certificate. All right, they're letting you know how they're going about to do it. All right, so it continues a little bit more and so on. All right, so we're gonna just go back to the other book. I just wanted you guys to get familiar, what they were saying in 1924, how they were getting ready to, do their paper genocide. Walter Plecker made this a law and act. You're no longer to be called or classified as an Indian. Instead, you'll be classified as a Negro or mixed Indian. You're not pure blood anymore. So we're back in the book of North American tribes, chiefs, warriors, and their stories, from the brothers at N.A.A.S. of Canada. We were reading this part right here of the book. We're talking about paper genocide of the American Indian and the Racial Integrity Act of 1924 that Walter Plecker wrote. We went to go look at the original. So we're back here, and we're going to continue where we left off. It says, for Virginia's Indians, the policies championed by Plecker threatened their very existence, nearly wiping out the tribes who greeted the country's first English settlers and who claimed Pocahontas as an ancestor. This month, the legacy of those laws could, again, help sabotage an effort by the Pamunkey people to become the state's first federally recognized tribe. Obsessed with the idea of white superiority, Plecker championed legislation that would codify the idea that most people with one drop of Negro blood could not be classified as white. His efforts led the Virginia legislature to pass the Racial Integrity Act of 1924, a law that criminalized interracial marriage and also required that every birth in the state be recorded by race, with the only option being white and colored. Only two options, no Indian. No longer Indian, remember? Plecker was proud of the law and his role in creating it. It was, he said, the most perfect expression of the white ideal and the most important eugenical effort that has been made in 4,000 years. Alright, he thought he was so big of himself, right? The act didn't just make anyone deemed colored in Virginia second-class citizens. It also erased any acknowledgement of the real identities of the American Indians. Alright? It also erased any acknowledgement that you were an American Indian, because your ancestors became colored or Negro, black. So they take your identity that you were an American Indian, right? Whom Plecker claimed no longer truly existed in the Commonwealth. He said you were no longer there. There's no Indians here anymore. Yeah, because he wrote them out of history. Paper genocide. With a stroke of a pen, paper genocide. Virginia was on a path to eliminating the identity of the Pamunkey, the Mattaponi, the Chickahominy, the Monacan, the Rappahannock, the Nansemond, and the rest of Virginia's tribes. He told us we had no right to exist as people, said Powhatan Red Cloud Owen, a Vietnam veteran who belongs to the 850 member Chickahominy tribe. He tried to destroy a people like Hitler did. It was a genocide. Inside of this great country of ours. It was devastating. Plecker, for Virginia Indians, the name is an expletive. I would call him the villain in our sacred story, says Corrine Wood, 55, a member of the Monacan, the largest of the Virginia tribes, with more than 2,000 members. As soon as you raise his name, people make bad faces. Standing in the graveyard adjacent to the Chickahominy Tribal Center, Steve Atkins, the 69-year-old chief of the tribe in Providence Forge, about 20 miles southeast of Richmond, says he is pained by what his people endured as a result of the Racial Integrity Act. It forbade giving your child an Indian name, Atkins says, and it caused people like my mom and dad to have to go to Washington, D.C. to be married as Indians. Others simply left Virginia rather than stay where they could no longer call themselves Indians. Alright? It caused separations of families, Atkins says. It was devastating. The devastation lasted decades. Plecker directed registrars around the state to change birth certificates, to cross out Indian and write in colored. You hear this? All right, this is history. This is real. This is what happened to you, to your ancestors, to your grandmas, moms. They were grabbing your birth certificates, all right? And it would say Indian and they would cross it out and put colored. He had Indian children removed from white schools and Indian patients removed from white hospitals. He pushed back against the American Indians who tried to maintain their tribal identity, and he rejected federal efforts to acknowledge the existence of Indians in the state. Plecker saw Indian identity as dangerous because he believed it would simply be used as a way station by people who ultimately just wanted to be classified as white, says Michaela Adams, assistant professor of American Indian history of the University of Mississippi. Of course, there were many reasons that white classification in 20th century Virginia was extremely beneficial. It means access to better schools, homes. It meant essentially freedom. Instead, Indians lost freedoms and very nearly lost their identity. That was Plecker's goal, as he explained in 1943 letter that he addressed to local registrars, clerks, legislators, and others responsible for and interested in the prevention of racial intermixture. Public records in the Office of the Bureau of Vital Statistics and in the State Library indicate that there does not exist today a descendant of the Virginia ancestors claiming to be an Indian who is unmixed with Negro blood. He wrote, in other words, Virginia was rid of Indians. Alright, so this is one of those registrations of birth and color in Virginia, the card that they had to fill out. And it says, a registration of birth and color record for children in Virginia used during Plecker's term as the first registrars Virginia's Bureaus of Vital Statistics. It required a strict definition of race that eliminated the category of American Indian. You're no longer Indian. This was part of the Racial Integrity Act of 1924. Virginia would eventually repudiate the Racial Integrity Act. The law was effectively canceled out in 1967 when the Supreme Court ruled in favor of an interracial Virginia couple's right to marry in Lovin versus Virginia. And in 2002, then Governor Mark Warner officially apologized for the Commonwealth's role, but some of the damage has been irreparable. Plecker participated in an official disappearance of these tribes, says Senator Tim Kaine. So he might be discredited, and the official policy might be to apologize for him, but since the tribes haven't been recognized, he still has accomplished something that has not been reversed. He's still winning. All right, so that was a little bit of Walter Plecker. All right, and this part of the book as well.